Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk, or in the case of this particular video, TV Talk. Reviewing Bates Motel recently kind of made me think I should review some other TV shows I like, and I've been making my way through Smallville recently. Some of you may not know that I am a huge fan of that show. I do love it. It's kind of like a happy place for me. I don't know why, there's just something about it. I guess the moral outlook of the show, things like that, the sunny farm and this. When I watch Smallville, I tend to go back to a happy place inside. There you go. But I'm making my way through them at the minute, so I figured while I'm watching them, why not review them? I'm going to review them a season at a time, starting obviously with season 1. And just give you my thoughts on the seasons as and when I've watched them. If you're not a fan of Smallville, I'm sorry. If you've never seen Smallville, then hopefully this will encourage you to go and check it out. But this just gives me an opportunity to talk about one of my favourite shows. So, season 1, it's clearly made by people who are fans of the lore of Superman. For those who don't know, it follows a young Clark Kent. We see him as his powers begin to emerge, and he gets to grips with who he is, and what his destiny is. Obviously, on the path to becoming Superman. Now, they did have a rule instated right at the start that there was going to be no capes, no tights, no flying for the most part, although they did break that rule several times throughout the show's history. This is very much about the teenager Clark Kent and his path towards becoming Superman. What this show does, something that didn't happen in the comic books. They do change much of the lore, but like I say, they remain faithful to it as well. They remain faithful to the character of Clark Kent and Superman, having characters like Lana Lang and Pete Ross in there, which are obviously from the comic books. A lot of the stuff with Martha and Jonathan Kent, very faithful, as I say, to the comics. But the overriding thing in the show that doesn't come from the comic books is the fact that in this show, Clark knows Lex Luthor. From his teenage years, Clark saves Lex very early on in the pilot episode, and that kind of sparks off a relationship between the two, which in this season, at any rate, is one of friendship. There are times when Clark can't quite trust Lex, and I feel that mostly comes from his father, Jonathan, who really distrusts the Luthor family, because we get Lex's father in this, Lionel Luthor, who is a real piece of work, and is kind of the main villain, really. Obviously, Lex isn't really a villain yet. He is friends with Clark, and this is all about, as well as Clark's journey, it's all about Lex's journey to becoming a villain. And so he's not a villain yet, so they need someone to kind of fill that void, and that ends up being John Glover as Lionel Luthor, who is absolutely brilliant. Glover has never been better in anything that I've seen him in than he is in Smallville. Just as Lionel, steals scenes from under people left, right and centre. And having him on screen with Michael Rosenbaum as Lex is also always a treat to see, because Rosenbaum is a really great actor as well. He, for me, is the best Lex Luthor there's been. A lot of people will say Gene Hackman, but as much as I love Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, I just don't think he quite has the dynamism, whatever that word is, that the character has here in this series. And a lot of that obviously comes with the longevity of TV, being able to flesh characters out more. But I also do think that Rosenbaum brings an awful lot to the table. He's a very underrated actor, I think. And I'm surprised that his movie career hasn't gone a bit further than it has. He has many scenes in which he's got to convey an awful lot just through his body language, through his eyes, and just because of the twisted relationship with his father. there's one scene, I think it's in the episode Jitters, where we do get this exploration of the difference that Clark has with his parents, his loving parents, and what Lex has with his father, who is a manipulator, a tyrant, and only ever really shows moments of affection towards Lex when it benefits him, when there's something to be gained from it, as is the case, as I say, at the end of Jitters. And that moment is a really great moment. It's a really touching moment, and it's tragic. It's a very tragic moment because we know where Lex is going to end up. So the whole step of the way throughout this series, it's moments like this that really make you feel for him, really make you sympathise with him, because there is a good man in there somewhere. And we see a lot of goodness from Lex throughout this season. I mean, in the episode Jitters, for example, he does save a bunch of school kids by offering himself in their place. So there is a heroic element to Lex as a character. And obviously, we're going to see that get stamped out of him as the series goes on. So, yeah, real tragic character, and all the better for it. Tom Welling is perfect casting, I feel, as Clark Kent. They found this guy. He hadn't really done much. I think he was a model and things like that. But yeah, spot on piece of casting. For a guy that's going to go on to do 10 seasons of this thing, he just embodies everything about Clark that you need him to be. This guy who's just got an innate sense of moral maturity, which again comes from his parenting. But yeah, I just think Tom Welling does a perfect job of it. Now, I know Jensen Ackles was up for this role at one point, and he does come in to play another character instead in season 4. And as much as I like Jensen Ackles in, say, Supernatural, and as much as I like what he brings to his character in season 4, I do think that Welling was the perfect choice. I think they definitely chose right. I don't think it would have been quite the same with Ackles in the role. And I think there's a certain sense of naivety about what Tom Welling brings to it that just works for Clark. That flannel-wearing farm boy. It's just, yeah, nails it. Perfect casting. Nothing more to say. Kristen Kruk plays Lana Lang, who is obviously the childhood love of Clark's life before he would go on to meet Lois. More on that when we get into season 4. But I like Kruk in the role. I think she's a good actress. I think there are many times throughout the first season, and the show, just the show in general, where she proves herself as an actor and what she's capable of. However, she is a character that kind of becomes a bit of a dead weight in later seasons. Not so much here. I do think that in the first season, she serves the purpose of having that infatuation for Clark, that the thing that kind of becomes a driving force for him in many ways. He's always there to save her, and it provides the drama in Clark's life. Can he tell her his secret? Is he willing to be open enough with her? And if not, does that truly mean that he loves her? Does he really love her if he can't be open with her, this, that and the other? And a lot of that plays into his relationship with Lex as well. Does his inability to be able to tell Lex the truth kind of push Lex further into his destiny towards villainy, or would Lex have always gone that way regardless? So yeah, all those kind of questions are raised in this first season through those relationships, through that kind of core trio of this show, because those three are essentially the core characters, the core three. Now you do obviously have the periphery characters, the secondary characters. Chloe Sullivan probably being my favourite. I think it took them a while to get her right, to figure out what they were doing with her. A lot of the time in the early part of this season, she just kind of feels like Basil exposition. She's the character that they bring in. She's that typical kind of Joss Whedon character that he has in all of his TV shows and films, where you've got the computer expert who's, they're literally there to be Basil exposition, to tell you, yeah, the information you need to send the hero on the journey, which gets a bit old for me. So yeah, it's about halfway through this season they really start to kind of inject a lot more character into Chloe Sullivan, and it's helped greatly by the performance of Alison Mack. Now, I'm not going to get into anything about the real life situation of what Alison Mack's done or hasn't done, or this, that and the other. I know all that. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just here to talk about the show. And regardless of what she's done, just talking about the show, her performance was always spectacular in the show, and she always made the character of Chloe Sullivan someone I could really root for and engage with, and just feel a lot of sympathy for. She has a crush on Clark. She loves him really, but he gives all of his attention to Lana. He kind of dotes on her, and you as you see that happen again and again, you do really start to feel for Chloe throughout this series. I again love the character of Chloe, one of my favourite side characters, and that's helped mostly by the performance from Alison Mack. Another great performer, I think, for the series is Annette O'Toole. So we've got these two parents. We've got Jonathan Kent, Martha Kent, and I do find that John Schneider plays Jonathan Kent. I think he plays him brilliantly, but he does have the what's the proper word? The burden, I guess, of playing a character who at times does reveal how not perfect he is, which is a good thing. That's not a slant against the show. It's more realistic. I think that Jonathan is a very pig-headed, strong-headed guy. He has certain ways of thinking and believing, and often that makes him extremely stubborn. It's that stubbornness that sometimes becomes a bit of a stumbling block in the relationship between Clark and Lex, to the point where sometimes you wonder if his attitude towards Lex is going to be some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, that he makes Clark so cautious of Lex that it almost pushes Lex away. It almost makes Lex become the man that Jonathan believes him to be already. So there is that question there, would Lex become the man that he's going to become if it wasn't for this kind of overprotectiveness of Jonathan Kent? Martha, however, is she's a much more gentle kind of character, and I think Jonathan and Martha balance each other out. She's a lot more, she thinks things through a bit more, I think, from a heart perspective. I think if Jonathan is the head, Martha is the heart, and I think the two of them together make a whole person in the way that a married couple kind of should, and they set a good example when they're together for Clark, and I think Annette O'Toole is really great as Martha. Many a time throughout the show, she gets real great emotional beats. There are certain just nuances in her performance that make you truly believe this woman is Clark's mother and has a history with Clark. So like I say, Alison Mack, Annette O'Toole, and John Glover are the real standouts for me in the side characters, and from the core trio, for me, Rosenbaum is always the one who's the biggest pleasure to watch, because I love him as Lex, and the journey that he goes on and the performance that he always gives. He's always on top-notch form, which kind of leaves us with two secondary characters left in season 1 with which we need to talk about, which is of course Whitney Fordman, who I don't like at all. So he's played by Eric Johnson. I've not seen anything else that Eric Johnson has done since this, to the best of my knowledge, but certainly he doesn't give a great performance here, I don't think. Now, I can't tell if that's just because of him or what he's given from the material. Whitney Fordman is so up and down throughout this season with regards to the way he acts towards other people. One minute he treats them like they're his best friend, the next minute he's really... Yeah, it's just... You could very easily believe that this guy has some kind of multiple personality disorder, because he's just all over the place, and it gets to the point of annoyance. Like, he just becomes baggage. You know, he was obviously introduced as a character to be a foil for Clark when it comes to Lana, because obviously if there's no obstacle there, you know, other than, oh, can I tell you my secret, then yeah, you've got 24 episodes of the season in which that's the main thing. But once you stick Whitney Fordman in there, then obviously there is an obstacle beyond the whole secret thing. You know, like Lana has a boyfriend, so how do I navigate that? The only problem is they don't ever really do anything with Whitney Fordman that isn't just a nuisance. You know, every time this guy comes to the forefront, gets given a moment to shine in an episode, it just doesn't impress me. I don't like the character. I'm not keen on the performance. And yeah, like I say, he goes at the end of season 1, and when he does so, I was quite thankful for it. You got Pete Ross as well, played by Sam Jones III. He's another one that's kind of up and down. Like, I think from a writing perspective, he's handled a lot better. You know, he's Clark's best friend from childhood. He doesn't know Clark's secret. That doesn't come till season 2, so we'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, for now, he's the best friend that Clark still has to kind of lie to in many ways and dodge bullets with. But I think for this season, again, they don't quite know what to do with him, and I think that's one of the reasons of revealing the secret when we get to season 2. But for this season, yeah, I do think he's better written with regards to him as a character overall than what Whitney Fordman is. But I'm not keen on Sam Jones's performance. There's something about the way he acts that, again, I just found a little bit annoying. He's always doing this with his shoulders. It's just this weird thing, like he just acts with his shoulders, and he's doing this all the time. And he just, every time he does that, I don't know. If you've watched Smallville, if you're a fan of Smallville, you may not have noticed it. But if you go back and watch it now, you probably will notice it every time he does it. Because, yeah, I don't know. There's just something about the way, his physicality that annoys me in the performance. So I've never quite been able to warm to the guy, even though he does get the odd moment to shine. Well, like I say, that shining comes from the writing, what the writers give him to do in particular moments, rather than him as a performer. So yeah, I think if they'd have cast someone else in that role, I think I'd feel much warmer towards the character. So yeah, they're the two weak spots for me with regards to characters: Whitney Fordman and Pete Ross, though Pete Ross to a much lesser extent. One of the aspects of the show that they establish very early on in the pilot episode, in fact, is the idea of the meteor freak, which a lot of people complain about. You know, a lot of people say, oh, it's the annoyance of the show is that every week there's another meteor-infected villain in there, and it's kind of a wonder that there's anybody left in Smallville who isn't infected by the time we get through the series, which is funny. But hey, it's that whole Midsummer Murders mentality of a TV show. You need something, you need that kind of MacGuffin, so to speak, that allows for a constant wave of villainy. Otherwise, what are Clark and his friends gonna get up to? What are they gonna confront? You know, so the meteor shower and the effects of the meteors on people in various ways does add a really cool element that allows you to explore different types of villains. Having said that, I will say that the best episodes throughout season 1 are the ones that don't have meteor freaks. or if they do, the Meteor Freak themselves isn't really power based. For example, the episode Hourglass, we get this character who is an old man. He was a serial killer, and he falls into this water with meteor rocks in it, and for whatever reason, it makes him go young again, which means he can partake in his old hobby of killing people. Now, beyond being made a young man again, the guy doesn't have any powers. He can't freeze people or electrify people or steal their powers, things like that. No, it makes him young, and then he gets back to business. The meteor rock in that kind of becomes a bit of more of a non-event. It's just, this guy is a villain. He's a piece of work. It's not the meteor rocks that made him that way. He was always that way. He's just a scumbag, and that's that. And it makes him a more interesting character, and it makes the episode more interesting to watch as well. We get an episode called Rogue, in which we have this bent copper, this dirty cop, Sam Phelan, who, is a villain that Clark just has to outsmart. It's not power-based. He can't overcome him with his powers. This dude's just clever in the way he manipulates, in the way he gets Clark to do the things he wants him to get him to do. That makes him a much more interesting villain, and the episode itself becomes much more interesting as a result. So like I say, again, season finale, Tempest, not a meteor freak in sight. It's all character based. It's all driven by what is going on between our main lead characters. So as much as I like the device of the meteor infected, it kind of becomes, it's hit and miss, I guess, is all I'll say. It does have its standouts. You think about episodes like Leech, in which somebody steals Clark's powers. That's quite interesting. The dynamic there. That what does Clark do now that he doesn't have the powers, and what happens when you put his powers into the body of someone who doesn't have the same upbringing, the same responsibility or sense of responsibility, I should say. And again, I think when you use the meteor freak aspect on someone who isn't necessarily a villain, but has a cause or an agenda or something like that. So the episode Jitters, you've got this guy who's been ill-treated. He's got something going on with him because of the effects of the meteor rock. And then he takes Luthor Corp hostage. He goes to the plant and he takes a load of hostages. And this is a guy you can sympathise with because you know what his plight is. He's not become a psycho because he's developed powers. He wants justice. He's on borrowed time, and he wants the world to know what's happened. He needs to know what's happened. So stories like that are much more interesting. The use of the meteor kind of freak ability type thing are much more interesting when they're in stories like that. I'm not down with the meteor freak stuff. I understand why the show needs it. When you're doing 22 episodes a season, you need something. You need an element that allows for that. That allows for that repetitive nature. I don't mean that in a bad way. That's TV for you. Something happens. The characters go on a journey, and then you have to bring it back to the status quo by the end of each episode. That's just the nature of weekly television. I think the meteor freak element as well also suffers when it's a jock. Too many times they use jocks in this with meteor abilities, and every time they're jocks. They're dumb, idiotic, womanizing a-holes who have no character beyond being a stereotype from a John Hughes film. It's just, they're not interesting. But when you make the meteor freaks someone else who isn't a student at the college, but is rather someone else outside of the college environment, that's when they become more interesting. There are so few times as well when you can actually sympathise with the meteor freaks. On too many occasions, somebody gets a power and then instantly becomes a psycho, and you're just like, oh, okay. And certainly in the first season, it's never really fully explored the notion of, you know, does getting the power, does getting infected by the meteor freak warp your mind to the degree that that's why you become a psycho? Or is it literally just that most people are so weak-willed that the moment they get power, they instantly gravitate towards immoral behaviour? Yeah, like I say, it rarely allows you to sympathise with the meteor freaks. Not always. There are a couple of occasions. One being the character played by Amy Adams, which is my favourite actress, no less. Yeah, she appeared in an episode of Smallville. So she appears in the episode Craving, in which, yeah, she plays this overweight girl, and due to a meteor infection, she loses all the weight, but she needs to eat, like, aggressively, like, and yeah, things that she shouldn't be eating. But yeah, I sympathise with her character, and I don't know if that's mostly because of the performance by Amy Adams. Like I say, she's a great actress. She's won Oscars, been nominated several times, and for good reason. For my money, she's the best actress working today. Yeah, I will literally watch anything with her in it because she's in it. So she brings a lot to the table in her episode. I don't think her episode is a particular standout one, but I do think she gives a great performance. Again, she's memorable because I sympathise with her character, which particularly through the first season isn't a common occurrence when it comes to the meteor freaks, because they get infected, they go nuts, and that's it. They just need stopping. Whereas in this one, whereas in Craving, yeah, she makes me feel sympathy for the characters. Given that this season is from 2001, played from 2001 to 2002, this season, I think it still holds up really well. It has some really great special effects, some not so much. The mouth opening on the episode I just mentioned, Craving, is, yeah, not great. But then if you look at the pilot episode with the meteor shower, and the final episode with all the tornadoes and various other moments, there's some really good work done by, I believe it was Matt Beck, who is a carryover from the X-Files. Now, Mark Snow is also doing the music to this. He did the music to the X-Files, and there's many people on the crew and the cast, for that matter, that come from the X-Files. And I do think that, you know, that is the one show that this show owes a huge debt to. I think that meteor freak element as well is also kind of a carryover from the X-Files of you know, needing to figure out a different weird person each episode that Clark can investigate, go up against. And a lot of the meteor freaks that we get in this, their powers, you can trace them back to an episode of X-Files in which somebody had the same power. So, for example, Hothead, the third episode, in which this coach can kind of, yeah, start fires and control fires. That goes right back to a first season episode of the X-Files, in which there was a character in that could do the exact same thing. And like I say, that goes on throughout many. Most of the meteor freaks, if you look them up, you'll probably find some kind of equivalent in the X-Files. So absolutely, it did not go unnoticed to me that this show owes more than a debt to that show. I'm a huge X-Files fan. It's one of the first shows I ever got religiously into. Still love it even to this day. But hey ho, you know, that's the nature of the business. You know, if you look at a lot of shows today, look at the Arrowverse, much of what you see in that is ripped straight out of Smallville. They do many of the same things. So it all bleeds into each other, and that's fine. It's the nature of storytelling. You need that gimmick in order to bring you back each week. The point being, X-Files was a great show that looked really cinematic and had things in it that still hold up today. And a lot of the crew works on this show, and I think that shows, because a lot of the things in this first season, you watch it now and it still holds up. As we get into the other seasons, we will have like story arcs, long running story arcs that kind of run through a season and whatnot. I don't think we get that as much in season 1, and I think that's because they were finding their feet, they were developing the characters. There are a lot more episodes in season 1 that feel standalone. You do get a couple of arcs that kind of go over 2 episodes or so, you know, like things that are set up in one and then kind of paid off in another. But on the whole, season 1 does play as mostly, yeah, standalone episodes. Obviously, we do get the long-running arc of Clark and Lana, will they, won't they, that kind of thing. And we do get a bit of a thing with Lex with regards to Club Zero. Again, like I say, that's mentioned earlier on, and then eventually we get to it, and there's things that come out of that. But overall, we don't get that element, whereas we do in later seasons. So that's fine. It's a show finding its feet. I really like the first season. I don't think it's the best season of the show, but it's a very strong start. Now, my score for season 1, what I've done and what I will do for each season is I am going to take all the scores for each episode, because I give each episode its own separate score, and then I'm going to average it so you get a season average. And for season 1, I'm going to give it a 3.9 out of 5. So yeah, that is my review of season 1 of Smallville. I've not fully decided yet whether I'm going to review the others, because I don't know how you're going to feel about it. If you've enjoyed this review for season 1 and you'd like to see me review season 2, then please do comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on season 1. What are some of your favourite elements of it? Maybe tell me which is your favourite meteor freak to come out of this season. I think for me it is the guy I mentioned before, Harry Bolston, the guy who starts off as an old man and goes young. Yeah, probably the most interesting for me when it came to the season 1 meteor freaks. But what about you? Yeah, if you're not a fan of the show, then tell me why. If you don't have to like it, but I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are either way. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. Do check out my Patreon page if you would like to become part of the Bryan Lomax Movie Talk community in a bigger way. The links are down at the bottom. Leave your comments there also, and yeah, thanks for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.